Dany 7 picks up with Dany's story as the Khalasar has reached the edge of a river at the south of the Dothraki Sea, implying that however far this journey has taken, there is an extensive amount of time between this and the previous Dany chapter. And we find that the chapter begins with a battle having just ended, and Dany is riding her silver through the fields of the dead, followed by her handmaidens and the men of her personal guard. We find that after the Dothraki have slaughtered the area, the Jaqaran move among the wounded and dying on the battlefield, and these are known as the Mercy Men, as they have heavy axes which they bring with them, and they harvest the heads of those who are still alive in order to collect them. And this is an interesting custom for them to have, and this does raise some implications as to why this is part of their culture with regards to the ancient lores. Behind the Jaqaran follow a flurry of small girls who appear to have the job of removing all of the arrows from the corpses and fill baskets, probably in order to recycle them in some way. And then last of all, after they have moved on, the wild packs of feral dogs come sniffing to eat the dead that have fallen, and these dogs are noted to always be not that far behind the Khalasar. It appears that a town has been caught in the crossfire of a battle between Khals. As it is noted, the dead sheep here imply that Khal Ogo and his Khalasar slaughtered them, as Drogo's Khalasar are smart enough not to slaughter potential livestock. And we find that the town itself has been razed to the ground during the battle between the two Khalasars, and the women and children of Ogo's Khalasar currently being taken in as slaves by Drogo's. The only men that appear to have been spared are those that are old or crippled and potentially cowards. Now, Jorah notes that the people of this land are named the Lhazareen, and the Dothraki call them the Lamb Men. Daenerys even notes here that they could be mistaken for Dothraki as they have the same copper skin and almond-shaped eyes. However, it seems interesting to note here that this common ancestry implies that they come from the same culture at some point in the past and branched off. And it is noted that they herd sheep and also that they are vegetarian, it appears. They also notably cut their hair short, unlike the Dothraki custom of growing their hair long, showing that at some point they must have had some form of religious schism from that of Dothraki culture. It is interesting to note that this settlement here appears to actually be beyond the borders of where it should be, as Drogo has noted that they belong south of the river bend, implying that this is north of the river, and so they have technically encroached upon Dothraki territory. Dany is summoned to Drogo, and we find that on this day, Drogo has slew two rival Khals. First Ogo, and then when he fell, his son Fogo. And we find that the Blood Riders cut the bells from their hair and then add them to Drogo's. And it is revealed to us that what has happened is Ogo and his men were attacking this settlement when Drogo fell upon them. So this would seem to imply that perhaps Drogo took offence to this in some way. It is not entirely clear. Or it is entirely possible that since Ogo did sit on the same bench as Drogo in Vaes Dothrak not even that long ago when Viserys was crowned, it appears that while outside of Vaes Dothrak, there is absolutely no rules barred when it comes to attacking each other. Now, it is revealed to Dany by Jorah that he has tried to influence Drogo in order to head to Meereen, as Illyrio has notably wrote to them about how there was a plague last year there, and so they are paying handsomely for slaves to be used in their city. And this shows that Illyrio and Jorah, as part of the secret group which are manipulating Dany here, want her to make her way to Meereen, it appears. Dany is distracted, however, by the men of the Khalasar taking the women and having their way with them as spoils of war, by the sound of them screaming for help, and she herself, having gone through such traumas, takes offence and then decides that she is no longer going to accept this. And so as Dany moves through the city, she begins sending her honour guard out in order to collect up all the women to prevent them from being attacked by the men. And as she does this, she begins to draw the ire of all of the Dothraki warriors. And it is during this that she comes across Mirri Maz Duur, who speaks the common tongue, interestingly enough, which is actually very uncommon for people in this region of the world, it would seem, as the Dothraki are not known to do widely, and the Lhazareen do appear to be an offshoot of the Dothraki and have no need of the common tongue as they don't openly trade with Westeros. Dany eventually reaches Drogo, who is sitting before a great temple with a brown onion-like dome. Beside him is a pile of all the heads which was brought to him, which sits taller than what he is. She sees that one of the lambmen's arrows appears to be stuck in its upper arm, and blood covered the left side of his chest like a splash of paint, and he is flanked by his three blood riders. He has also taken a wound from an arak to his chest, which has removed his nipple and also left a flap of bloody flesh dangling from his chest area. And so we find that Drogo reveals to us that the concept of the bells in the hair seems to be passing on the honour and power of those you defeat, as he rings the bells in his hair and comments that what they are hearing is Ogo and his heir. So the concept of the bells in the hair seems to be that a being absorbs the essence or power of those they defeat. A common trope in most primitive civilizations on Earth, most likely due to cannibalism, is that when you eat the flesh of something, you gain its power. While she is with Drogo, one of the Dothraki rides up, begins to rant in a rage about how Daenerys has taken their spoils of war. And when Drogo presses her on this, she comments that she wants to take them. However, he notes that this is just the way of the world, until she becomes enraged and snaps at the Dothraki that she is the dragon, that she eats both lamb and horse alike, which actually excites Drogo, and he laughs at how fierce she has become because she is filled with the fire of his new son. Now, curiously, Jorah had commented that Drogo had only received scratches. However, here it's clear that this is more than just a mere scratch, as there is a literal flap of flesh hanging off his chest, and he does appear to be in great pain because of it, which leads me to believe that this is part of Illyrio and Jorah's plan here. They never intended for Drogo to make it to Meereen or even to make it to Westeros to attack because their plans are not ready yet. They want Drogo out the picture, much like what happened with Robert. And we see that by his sheer bravado, Drogo turned away his own healers, as a Khalasar has two sorts of healers, barren women and eunuch slaves. The herb women deal potions and spells, while the eunuchs deal in knife, needle, and fire. So basically, the eunuchs acting as surgeons, whereas the barren women are acting as pharmacists. And so Drogo has sent them to heal the rest of his Khalasar first. When Dany calls for the healers to be brought back to Drogo, however, Mirri Maz Duur steps up and offers herself. Now, notably, when she met Daenerys, she greeted her in the common tongue, and now we see that she can also speak fluent Dothraki, implying that she is a person of learning, and she claims that she is a god's wife of this temple. The Dothraki regard her as a magi, which Daenerys remembers from old Dothraki tales as a woman who lay with demons and practiced the blackest of sorceries, a vile thing, evil and soulless, who came to men in the dark of night and sucked the life and strength from their bodies, which makes me think this is yet another one of the Dothraki parallels to the Night's Queen, as there's a lot of symbolism there connecting with the magic that we see Melisandre using as well. So a magi is definitely some form of shadow binder, and much like Night's Queen, she most likely creates shadow-like beings she can use to do her bidding, as well as having the ability to steal the souls of men, which is something that we know can be done with the glass candles. Mary reveals that her mother was supposedly a god's wife in the temple before her, and that when she was younger, she travelled by caravan to Ashai by the Shadow to learn from the mages there, where many ships come from many lands, and so she lingered long to study the healing ways of multiple different people. We find that moonsingers apparently have birthing songs. A woman of the riding people, or Dothraki, taught her the magics of grass and corn and horse, and a maester from the Sunset Lands opened a body for her and showed her all the secrets that hide beneath the skin. So basically, she learned autopsy and biology from a maester, which piques up the interest of Jorah, and she names this maester as Marwyn, who will come into play a lot further down the line in the books. And apparently, it is he who taught her the common tongue. All men are of one flock under the great shepherd, according to their religion, and the Great Shepherd sent her to this earth to heal his lambs wherever she might find them, meaning that even though they have just attacked and destroyed their civilization, she is still willing to help them as all people belong under one God. Which makes me wonder if this is a Lhazareen variant of the concept that the Faceless Men have, that there is one God who is the same as all the hundreds of other gods, the God of Death. Mary also notes that they need to dress his wound or else it will fester and he will become ill. Drogo becomes annoyed by the constant infighting here and decides that she will be allowed to treat his wounds so as to shut everyone up. And so she takes him within the temple or God's house because that is supposedly where her powers of healing are the strongest. And as well, there inside the temple, we get another piece of evidence that I believe points to the fact that the Lhazareen do in fact follow this same religious belief, which is also followed by the cult that want to end the immortal beings, as there is idols carved from blue veined marble. And so Miri fixes Drogo's wounds and commands that he must keep the dressing in place for at least 10 days and 10 nights, or else it will not work, and that there will be fever and itching and a great scar when the healing is done. She also notes that he cannot drink wine or milk of the poppy while this is happening, and he must keep his body strong in order to fight the poison spirits, which is basically her using antibacterial or antiseptic logic. She's obviously learned this from Marwyn when he showed her how bodies work. Now, it's revealed to us that Daenerys is very near her birthing time, implying that since she became pregnant, it has now been 9 months of time that has passed, giving us a more accurate timescale of how time has progressed across this story. And so Drogo continues to ignore Miri's advice as he claims he can drink what he wants and do what he wants, and that slaves do as they're told. And this inevitably is going to come back to bite him in the ass. However, his blood riders threaten Miri and make the point that whatever happens to Drogo will happen to her too. And then her answer to this is that the Great Shepherd guards the flock. And if you're part of a cult who basically revere death and believe that everybody has their time and everybody dies, then it makes sense that she is deliberately allowing Drogo to not do what he is instructed to do in order to kill him as part of the plan to keep him from getting to Westeros because it is too soon for the final plan to be enacted.